to speed, people, and then you're taking a hard left. 2, 1, and away we go! Ratoath Half-Marathon, big numbers here this morning.
Welcome to my video on the Ratoath Half-Marathon. This is a bit of a unique one. So you start off in Ferryhouse Racecourse, which is a horse racecourse, and you then finish by doing a lap of the racecourse. So yeah, bit of an interesting one. For this half marathon, my goal was to definitely go sub 118, and my goal for the year has been to do a half marathon sub 117. It is my first half marathon of the year actually. I hadn't really signed up to any. I had been hoping to do the Great Northern Run the week before, but didn't get a place in the ballot. So this was one where I was hoping to at least sort of gauge that half marathon fitness. So it's 2 weeks out from the Warsaw Marathon, so I felt like I was in a place where I could push hard in this race and then use my taper as a chance to recover, and it wouldn't really affect the marathon. So for a sub 118 half marathon, I would need to run a 3:42 average pace, and for sub 117 is around 3:39 average pace per kilometre. If you go by mile, that's about 5:57 per mile for 118 and 5:52 per mile for the sub 117. So a bit about this course itself. We took a left out of the race course and then we followed these country roads for a couple of kilometers. So they're kind of typical country roads, from small down, some nothing major. The main thing was at this point we're running into a bit of a strong headwind. So I think beforehand when I looked it up, I think it was saying like 30-kilometer winds, and they were pretty much coming from southwest. So this is kind of going south. So yeah, directly into these. But actually we're in a bit of a pack here, so it's actually not bad. So yeah, just kind of plowing through, try to stay with a group as much as I could and sort of get that benefit of blocking the wind a bit. So one of the main reasons I was sort of thinking about sub 118 rather than sub 117 beforehand was to do with this wind. Didn't really know how strong it would be, how much impact it would have, and you know how many people would be sort of running towards the front as well. That obviously has an impact. If you're kind of running out on your own, you're more exposed to that wind, and it's obviously going to affect your running. And then if you're in a pack, you know, you can kind of work together or whatever. So yeah, that's part of the reasons why I had sort of subdued expectations. The other reason is probably to do with my own training. So a lot of the times lately when I've been going out on my long runs, I'm trying to do marathon pace segments, which would be obviously slower than half marathon pace. These have been a bit of a struggle. I've kind of had a philosophy in this training block of going into my workouts tired, so that, you know, I create that effect of working on tired legs, but it does have that kind of negative effect and impact on confidence, where, you know, I'm not necessarily managing to hit every single marathon pace workout. And so I also didn't really know where the fit was going to be and, you know, how the body would hold up. So throughout that little segment I was talking, I would have gone through the first kilometer marker. Did this first kilometer in 3:38, so it was kind of pinpoint on pace for sub 117. So I was a bit surprised by how the body was feeling, but yeah, at this point I wasn't really gauging much by that. I was just trying to stick with the pack as much as I could, and I'd kind of evaluate my body as the race went on. I was going to do sort of individual kilometer markers throughout the whole video, but I think what I'll do is every 5 or so kilometers. But if you would have prepared to see 1 kilometer segments, let me know, and it's something I'll keep in mind for future videos. So as we take this left, we're kind of leaving that headwind, and it felt like a bit of a tailwind to me because I couldn't really feel much wind resistance at this point, so that was quite good. 5k split isn't in this video, but I'm just going to run through it for this because the footage won't exactly correlate with where I'm discussing, but that's just to make it a more condensed video and more watchable. So I did 2k in 3:35, 3k in 3:37, 4k in 3:37. The 5th kilometer was in 3:33, which meant my 5k split was 18:01 for the first 5k. Still feeling pretty good at this point, and actually kind of pushing on a bit with pace. Kind of had to catch that group, as you saw in the clip there, that was in front of me. There was a bit of a gap and I was a bit exposed, so yeah, I put a bit of effort in, especially that 2nd kilometer, in towards catching that group and sort of benefiting off the wind resistance being blocked for me. So at this point of the race, I was still feeling quite good, and I was a little bit surprised by that. I was expecting to feel a little bit of fatigue, but no, felt really good so far. So I was actually, quite surprised, but quite happy with that. Made me kind of a bit more confident to push on and maybe push for the sub 117. The only question was about whether I could, hold on to this and sustain it. So that was kind of what I was thinking at this point. But yeah, gauging the body felt pretty good. One thing I had done with this was I still wanted to cover a 120 kilometer training week, as it's kind of my last major training week before my taper begins. So what I did was 40 kilometers between Monday and Tuesday. That Tuesday was actually a bit of a workout, so I did 8 kilometers warm up, 5 kilometers at marathon pace with a 1k float, and then 5 kilometers at half marathon pace. The reason for that was to just stimulate the legs with a bit of speed in them. And the rest of the week was just all just easy stuff. Wednesday was a day off, Thursday was a very easy 10k, and Friday was a shakeout, as this race was on a Saturday. So the shakeout was just 4k easy, and then 5 20-second strides at half marathon pace. One of the reasons I did this was to front load the week a little bit, and then I would do a long run on the Sunday after this so that I could get my mileage in, but at the same time sort of test out a taper. So it was only a mini taper, obviously a few days, but yeah, the fact that I felt pretty good at this point is something that I'm going to use to kind of calculate my taper week of the actual marathon race week for Warsaw Marathon. So at this point things have spread out a little bit, and I'm trying to kind of keep with this group. There's a fella, he's sort of just beside me here, that I'd actually just taken over before I started recording this video, and we're all kind of, I suppose, working a bit together, so we're trying to cling on to these people in front. So I overtook that fella with the goal of catching up to this group, and then we tried to cling on. Basically didn't really say that to him, but in my mind I figured he'd follow me. So yeah, went through 10k. The 10th kilometer was 3:39, but all the other kilometers in between 5 and 10 had been kind of in the 3:34, 3:35 range. So I crossed 10k in about 35:58, so a little bit quicker for the second 5k than the first 5k. At this point was feeling still pretty good, but at this point we'd taken another left, and we were kind of traveling into what felt like another headwind. Not as bad as the first one, but yeah, to me it felt like we were actually running into the wind, but it wasn't actually too bad. It was maybe because I psyched it up in my own mind. I thought it'd be much worse, but yeah, it didn't feel too bad. So obviously to be feeling good at this point is probably where you want to be. You don't want to be struggling at only the halfway point of a race. But yeah, in my mind, I hadn't been sure would I be able to, keep up with this pace this long anyway. So just to get to halfway and not be struggling at this point was something I was happy with. Another thing I probably should have mentioned earlier, the shoes I was running this were the Nike Vaporfly 4s. So I'd actually only bought these and only done my shakeout in them, hadn't actually really run in them before, so it was a bit of a risk, but they just felt really comfortable when I tried them on and decided to buy them. So I kind of figured this race wasn't a vital race to me, so if it went wrong with the shoes, it was something I'd learn from, but if not, I could maybe even consider these shoes for the marathon, and haven't decided yet, but we'll come to that in 2 weeks time. So obviously when you do these sort of country races, they're a bit different to when you do, a big city race like in London or whatever. But one of the things I really like is that you see people that are just sat outside their house or whatever, or just outside the school there, and they're giving great support. And it's a bit different than when they're seeing, tens of thousands of people going through their city. This is just a small 2,000 people race, and they're getting out and supporting, so that's always good to see. And yeah, they give good encouragement as well, so fair play to all them people. So we went up a bit of a hill as we went past that school as well, and yeah, you can see the group sort of separated out a little bit. Those two lads in front, or three lads, sort of went on ahead, and then the fella in the black and orange singlet, he kind of on the downhill was able to do quite well. So yeah, started to spread out at this point, but yeah, halfway through a race, that's what you're going to expect to see, especially 2,000 people. People are going to be running a bigger variance of times than if there was 10,000 people in the race. So I've moved forward again in the video a little bit, and this time was a little bit later in the race, so we've kind of actually caught up to this fella in green, and the fella in the black and orange I think had actually gone ahead of us both at this point. This was a bit of a tougher section of the race course. We again turned left, which meant we're now heading west, and as I told you earlier, it was a southwest headwind that we were running into. So yeah, this was quite hard, and obviously we're about 3/4 of the way through the race at this point, so the effort level has gone way up compared to earlier, and it is starting to become a little bit more of a struggle than it was previously. So between 10 and 15k, I've been mostly averaging about 3:36 per kilometre, nearly bang on each kilometre. But for the 15th kilometre, it was actually a 3:40 kilometre, so I was beginning to slow down a little bit into this headwind. But I did cross the 15k mark in 54:04, which meant I was still pretty much bang on target for sub 117, which at this point I was now kind of targeting in my own mind. Now it can be a bit hard doing the maths during a race. I knew that a rough average of about 3:39 was sub 117, but the big question was how I'd be able to hold onto this pace running on the race course, which is obviously a big open space and into a headwind for a good chunk of it. So I knew that was going to be difficult, just didn't know how much I would have to slow down for that bit. But my main goal here was to try keep as close to 3:40 or faster per kilometre for as long as I could. So just for reference, each of the 6k splits I've done so far, I've done in roughly 21 minutes and 35 seconds. If I was able to kind of do that from the 15k mark, I'd finish in about 1:15:40, but I knew that I was most likely going to have to slow down at this point. This was a part of the race where the winds were really going to be affecting us. We're obviously running on a bit on tired legs at this stage, and we're running into headwinds. So yeah, it was going to get tough from here, but you just got to dig in. Keep kind of in mind how you're feeling, but at the same time what you need to do to achieve whatever goal you're doing. and try to kind of focus mentally on that aspect. So the final 3 kilometers are back in Ferryhouse Racecourse. You can see we're running up through kind of the entrance here, and then we go and do a full lap of the actual racetrack itself on tarmac. So I crossed 18 kilometers in about 1 hour, 5 minutes and 8 seconds, which left me an 11 minutes and 52 second buffer to go 117. So let's see if I can do that. So between this and the previous clip, you'll have heard my breathing is a lot heavier at this point. You know, I'm really having to push, but the main thing was how I would respond when I got out on the race course into the open space and really into that headwind. So I think for about probably 2 of the 3 kilometers remaining, it was going to be into this headwind. Only benefit of that is that the final kilometer would have a bit of a tailwind, so to be able to push. So you can see the timer is there, and we'll see how I got on. So that race course section was quite tough into the headwinds, but yeah, that last kind of kilometre or so was with a tailwind, so kind of better to have that at the end, I guess. Overall, my time ended up finishing in 1:16.41, so I was delighted with that. It's a 2 minute and 15-second PB, and it shows the training's working. So I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and you'll see more. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. So coming up on the right in the purple at the end of this next video is Mark. He came up to me before, said he watched the channel. So thanks for watching, Mark. Hope you enjoyed the race, and really great time in the 123s. Well done.
That's the old Dave Dempsey line. If you're running from Northeast Runners, well done. And our sixth female is in from Denor Harriers. Keep on walking, women coming in. And a fast finish here. Just be careful coming into the finish. Be careful. Be careful.